Hi all, Keith with Balanced Body and Mind. Today I want to talk about adrenal fatigue, and do you actually have it? Well, you probably don't, because if you had truly fatigued adrenals you would be dead, as shown by the pioneering stress physiologist Hans Selye. Many modern day tests or functional medicine tests often use something called an adrenal stress index. What does this actually measure? Well, often it shows us how much cortisol we're producing, which is an anti-inflammatory hormone, but also a stress hormone that's used to liberate energy, particularly when we're stressed, to deal with a so-called fight or flight response. It also measures the amount of DHEA, which is a powerful repair hormone. And often than not, we often show that we're either producing too much cortisol, hyper, or not enough, hypo. But what does this actually mean and tell us? Well, if we look at a standard adrenal stress index chart, it might show us that cortisol is being produced too low or too high, and this will usually give us a stage of a so-called adrenal fatigue. This doesn't actually tell us very much, because adrenals and adrenal stress function on its own is a very isolated approach. Consider that if we're in a state of low blood sugar levels, we're going to produce more cortisol. Why? Because we want to liberate energy, and when there's not enough glycogen stored in the liver, we often need to produce cortisol to mobilise fatty acids from stored tissue. So analysing the adrenal stress index on its own tells us absolutely nothing. The problem is that many practitioners will then go and write a nutrition strategy based upon either too low or too high cortisol levels, and use lots of adaptogenic herbs to try and bring these out to balance. But what if, say, a key system like the thyroid was out? What if you were constantly in such a low state of blood sugar levels from your diet plan, your exercise regime, from stress and poor sleep, that actually all these are always going to be wayward, particularly with low blood sugar levels and constantly having to produce cortisol? Looking at something like the thyroid combined with adrenals gives us a much better idea of what's going on. The thyroid gland, which I've talked about, usually many medical practitioners and doctors will measure TSH, which is thyroid stimulating hormone. The hormone that's produced when our thyroid isn't working as well as it could be, and it particularly shows up in low states of energy and fatigue as well. So there's a good interaction between what the adrenals do and what the thyroid does. We often need to look at markers such as T4 and T3. TSH is produced, which is then makes sure that the hormone T4 is converted into T3, the more active compound of thyroid hormone. We also have body temperature and pulse. These indicators on their own are much more indicative of what's going on with your metabolism and your system as a whole. Your body temperature should be about 37 degrees. A good pulse should be 70 to 85. This is based upon the suggestions of Broder Barnes and Ray Peat, who've done extensive work on metabolism, energy, and just raising the biological wholeness of the human body and getting it functioning at its truly most optimal. When we see our pulse rate kind of suppressed in its 50s and 40s, it's a good sign that someone's metabolism is being suppressed. What we'll often see with suppressed metabolism is the adrenals boosting up. So if the thyroid goes down, we may see the adrenals go up, just to try and balance out what's going on with the thyroid. It's really important that we have thyroid functioning. We should not always look at the adrenals just to determine if someone's in a state of so-called adrenal fatigue, and it gives us just a reading of either hypo or hypercortisolemic. Check your pulse, check your body temperature, look for things such as digestion, sleep, energy, libido, skin health, and they're some of the markers that you can look at to determine whether things are actually working out well for you or not.